Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar on building a performance-based culture. My name is Jessica. I'm on the marketing team with BizLibrary, and I'll be the host for today's session. Before we get started, I want to go through just a couple of housekeeping items. First, what you should see on your screen. On the left-hand side of the screen, this is the webinar viewers. This is where you'll see the content that we're sharing with you today. On the right-hand side of the screen, this is the control panel. So this is where you can join the audio portion of today's webinar, and you can also communicate with us through the question box. The default mode for the control panel is for it to collapse. If you want to open the control panel back up, simply click the orange box with the white arrow in it, and it'll expand for you. All of today's attendees are in listen-only mode. You can join the audio portion of today's webinar either through the teleconference line. You can also listen through your speakers. If you're going to listen through your speakers, I recommend either using a pair of headphones or a headset to get the best audio quality. I like to keep things pretty informal, so if you have any questions or discussion points throughout today's webinar, feel free to send those over through the question box located within the control panel. I like to weave them in as it relates to the content that we're discussing. Then I'll also leave some time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. I am recording today's session, so I'll make a link to the webinar recording as well as the slides and follow-up information available on our blog after today's session. So that's bizlibrary.com/bizblog. I'll also send out a follow-up email that'll include a link to the webinar recording as well as the slides within 24 hours, and that'll come through GoToWebinar. If you'd like to download the slides for today's webinar before we get going, I put a link to those in the chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You should have also received a link to the slides in the reminder email that you received this morning. Happy to say that today's session has been approved for 1 hour CE credit for all of you HR professionals attending. I'll make a link to the completion certificate available at the end of today's webinar. I'll also email out a link to the completion certificate to all of today's attendees in the follow-up email that you'll receive tomorrow afternoon. The most important thing is the program ID number. That's what you'll need to record with HRCI. Again, my name is Jessica Petrie. I actually just got married, so I haven't had all of my name change stuff happen, so I still have my email address and stuff, but I'm on the marketing team with BizLibrary. I graduated from the University of Missouri-Columbia with a degree in journalism. I've been working in the training and development industry now for about 5 years. I'm pretty active in social media, so I tweet on behalf of BizLibrary at Twitter handle @BizLibrary and also at my own account at JessBats. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, so I like to share a lot of articles and discussions around training and development, human resources, and marketing in general. So if you're on either of those social networks, would love it if you'd reach out and connect. Presenting with us today is Chris Osborne. Chris is the VP of Marketing for BizLibrary. Chris has also worked in a consulting capacity with a Paris-based leadership development consulting firm where he helped organizations design and implement leadership and executive development programs. He's been performing learning development and training functions formally since 2000 and informally for organizations since 1987. Chris is also a member of the adjunct faculty in the HR management program at WashU in St. Louis, where he teaches courses on conflict resolution and discrimination. Prior to Chris's move into the business sector, he practiced law in the areas of labor, employment, and business litigation for over 12 years. He graduated from WashU School of Law with honors in 1987. So Chris is also active in social media. You can find him on Twitter at Chris Osborne STL, and he is also on LinkedIn. To give you a little bit of background on BizLibrary, BizLibrary is a leading provider of learning and talent management solutions specifically designed for small and mid-sized organizations. So we provide the industry's largest and fastest growing collection of high-quality training videos and e-learning courses covering more than 25 topic areas. Whatever training your employees need, you'll find it with BizLibrary. So content and learning technology all in one place. Additionally, our cloud-hosted LMS, performance management, and social learning applications help organizations streamline and simplify important performance management processes. Our solutions have been recognized by Brandon Hall, TrainingIndustry.com, and eLearning Magazine. And thank you for the kind chat comments, Chris. I really appreciate those. It's a little distracting, like looking at the chat. Just want to acknowledge it, but have to keep moving forward. So thank you. Glad to have you all with us today also.
Sometimes I sneak other things in there. Today I was being nice.
Yeah, you were being nice, so thank you very much. Glad to be back into the real world. Almost. All right, so a couple poll questions to tee things up for today. So I have one to start them off, and then there's a couple of other ones we've done throughout. But this first one is, would you consider your organization to be a performance-based organization? So you should see the poll come up on your screen in just a minute. So this is pretty straightforward. Just say yes, no, or no, not yet.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting topic on a whole range of reasons because we all would like to be here, in a way. I think we would like to think that our organization is really performance-based, that, this is something that we really value and strive towards. But this is hard to do. I mean, saying that this is what we aspire to or this is where we're trying to get to is certainly one thing, but getting here is something really difficult. And there's a lot of great research in the marketplace coming out of Harvard Business School about how difficult it is for organizations to achieve strategic goals. This is not easy stuff. So this is always, but I love this webinar topic. And anyway, Jessica had a lot to do with putting this content together, so this is going to be a very collaborative session today. So hope you guys enjoy this. It looks like just about everybody that's going to vote has voted there. Yeah.
Go ahead and share the results. So it looks like 46% said yes, 16% said no, and then 37% said no, not yet. And also we had an interesting comment from Kate. She said, performance-based, unfortunately, doesn't equate to measuring the right things. So even if you are performance-based, doesn't mean that.
Kate, you're spot on. We sometimes play Chris Bingo around here because I have these silly expressions that I use. But one expression that I've been harping on with the leadership team here lately ties right into this. And it's, you can't get good answers if you're not asking the right questions. And that's exactly what you're talking about. If we're not measuring the right things, we're not going to focus on improving in the right areas. So great observation. You're exactly right.
All right, so we kind of tee things up today with this nice quote from Scott Keller and Colin Price from the book Beyond Performance. So Chris, if you want to go ahead and lead us off, I'll hold on to the ball for a bit through today's session.
Yeah, I think you need to close the poll, though. I still see the poll results. No, that's okay. That's why we're a team. Yeah. Now these guys work for McKinsey, and this is a really great business book. It's called Beyond Performance, and it's not the destination, it's the journey that's valuable. This is a really, I firmly believe this, but building a high-performance culture is like that. If you only focus on the results, you're only focusing on part of the picture. It takes both building organizational performance and organizational health. And I didn't want to put this entire passage in the presentation for you, but I'm just going to read briefly how they define these two terms. So this is directly from the book. Performance is what an enterprise delivers to its stakeholders in financial and operational terms, evaluated through measures as net operating profit, return on capital employed, total returns to shareholders, net operating costs in stock terms. Health is the ability of an organization to align, execute, and renew itself faster than the competition so that it can sustain exceptional performance over time. And what Keller and Price suggest, and I think compellingly, by the way, through research, through a lot of really great work, is that it takes both pieces for organizations to really succeed. And in fact, if you think back before the economic downturn in 2008, 2009, what two segments of the economy were really, really doing well on performance? Banking and energy. And what two segments got hammered the hardest? Banking and energy, because both segments as industries had really lost sight of organizational health, so they weren't set up to sustain that level of performance. Anyway, some interesting work. These guys are really brilliant, and I highly recommend the book. So this is a little, Jessica mentioned that I did consulting, so I love Foursquares. But this is a really great one, and it really lays out this organizational health and organizational performance, I think, in an interesting way. And on the left-hand side, the sort of the vertical axis, we got motivation and attitude. And if you sort of think of these as sort of the human pieces of this, kind of the learning and development health piece of it, and then across the horizontal axis, across the bottom, you get skills and knowledge, sort of the performance piece of it. We end up with these 4 quadrants. We got remedial action in the lower left. Well, that's pretty apparent. We got poor motivation and a lack of skills with employees or groups or teams. That's one set of challenges. And unfortunately for most HR teams, this is where we spend a lot of our time, is in the remedial action area. If we have good motivation, you know, we're motivated, we have good attitude, but low skills, that's a learning challenge. And that's not a bad place to be. We've got employees that want to learn, so that's a learning challenge. If we have poor motivation, but the skills and knowledge to perform, that's an engagement issue, that's something different. But where we want to be, where we want our organizations to be, is in the upper right-hand quadrant, where we maintain good attitudes and motivation. In other words, that organizational health piece is high, but we also have the skills and knowledge to succeed, that perform. Then we're in true performance management, where what we're doing is building on success in a phase of continuous improvement. And that's really what we want to talk about today, is how to get our organization out of these other quadrants and into that quadrant. So we're going to talk about 5 highly interdependent components of high-performing organizations. And these are so intertwined, it's very difficult to separate these. And when we start to talk about them, you'll see just how intertwined they are. But their strategy. High-performing organizations take a strong customer approach to their work. They're marked by strong leadership, and we'll talk about what that looks like. They have great processes and structures set up so their employees, their entire organizations can succeed. And then they have a really strong identifiable culture that everybody understands, that people buy into. So that's it. And these are 5 interdependent pieces. They all build on each other, and you don't get to this high-performing level without these 5 pieces being there. Again, think about, you know, what Keller said about this: performance and health, and these are all a piece of that. Okay. And you know, when we were doing our research in this area, you know, high-performance organizations, you're going to find all sorts of experts talking about it's all the culture, and you find examples of that. It's all about results. It's all about the leaders, and you know, the hedgehog. You know, it's you know, focus on this. The scholarship, the thought leadership, is confusing, I think would be a fair word for it. And I think we've got a slide that illustrates just how crazy and confusing it is. Yeah, we did some research just at Amazon. Now you can do your research at Google, wherever, but just for fun, we typed in the term high performance in the books section at Amazon just to see what we got. And high performance companies, 1,477 results. High performance teams, 3,300. High performance leaders, high performance leadership. And then just for fun, I put in low performance leadership. I got 34 results on that. So how do you figure out what's real? That was one of the challenges we had with this content, and we really struggled to come up with an identifiable answer. But we found some great guidance, and I really am excited to share this research with you, the results of what we found with you, because I think there's some really outstanding pieces of work out there that make a lot of sense to build from. So I think we've got another poll question here, and I want to get into that, and then we've got another couple pieces, and we're going to dive right into what we found.
Yep, so these next 2 are going to be quick, just to kind of get us thinking and a little bit of self-awareness. So you should see it pop up on your screen in just a minute. So where's your company compared to where you want to be? So would you say that you're A, ahead, B, about where you would expect, C, behind, or D, truthfully, you don't know? So again, these will be kind of quick. So if we could get your participation, we would love it.
Yeah, we're going to keep this open for just about 45 seconds here. So jump in and let us know. And this is just sort of a just a quick check of our audience here today. Kind of a fun piece of it. And I think we've got a pretty significant group that are being pretty candid with us here today. This is kind of fun.
Yeah, so we got 51% said behind, 28% said about where we would expect, 18% truthfully we don't know, and then 3% said ahead.
And I'm not surprised at that. In this marketplace, as crazy and confusing as it is, I'm not surprised at those results. So that's a big piece of the puzzle, though, isn't it? You know, if we're going to be a high-performing organization, the fact that you know you're behind is not necessarily a bad thing, by the way. And if you don't know, again, don't panic, because there's a way to get at that, and we're going to give you some suggestions today.
All right, so this next one is, how do you know? So you made a guess, or you participated in the poll, said where you were. So how do you know that? Is it you have well-defined goals and you measure them each month? You have goals and you look at them on a quarterly basis? You look at metrics annually, or you don't have well-defined criteria or metrics to measure your organization's success?
Yeah, again, we'll keep this open for just about 45 seconds here. So again, kind of just a sort of a barometer of where the group is. And once I'm going to let the poll close before I give you my personal and professional bias in this area here. But it's an interesting piece of this here. Okay, so yeah, Jessica, lead us through the results here.
Yeah, so we got 38% said they don't have well-defined criteria. 22% both said well-defined goals measured on a monthly. Another 22% said looking at metrics quarterly, and then 18% said metrics are reviewed annually.
Yeah, and isn't that fascinating? You know, we had a pretty fair percentage of our participants today that either didn't know or were a little behind. But look at the percentage. We have, what, 56% that look at metrics annually or don't have well-defined metrics. If we're going to be a high-performing organization, we're going to need to be looking at goals, well-defined measures of success, and evaluating them and working towards them more frequently than annually. That's really going to be a key piece of this, and so we'll talk about that as we dive in here a little bit more detail.
Yep. So Chris, I'm gonna pass the ball to you. So this next quote comes from Carl Rogers. So he is the president of the American Psychological Association, 1946. So he said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." So like Chris said, it's not necessarily a bad thing that you know that you're behind. It's rather that you know anything at all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a big piece of it. You know, Jessica and I have been working together here at BizLibrary on the same team since January of 2011. And if you go back in time, we didn't really know for sure exactly what we were dealing with when we started. The metrics we were working with were ill-defined, but we have been working relentlessly since then to make sense of the numbers and what's happening with the marketing function. And it's been relentless, because this is really what this has been about. We're trying to figure out exactly where we are, because once we understand that, we can make improvements and change. And so that's on a micro scale, you know, as a team, as a function here within BizLibrary, but it's true on a macro scale within the company, and it's true more broadly for your organizations. You really have to get that pinned down before you can move forward. It's just absolutely critical. So here you go. So if we're going to create a performance-based culture, there are really 5 things that you have to do. These are actions. These are the things that we have to do. First, we have to define success criteria. Then we have to set actionable goals. And you do this by asking 2 questions. What will success look like, and how will we know it? And keep the questions simple, and work really hard to make the answers to those questions simple to explain. Now, there's elegance in simplicity, but it's not easy to get to that elegant simplicity. Okay, I don't want to make it seem like this is just, what will success look like? Well, we'll have, 10% more customers next year. That may be the definition of success for you, but you need to dive into that and make sure you understand why that is an appropriate success criteria. So define success criteria by relentlessly diving into the why it's important. Once you understand the why, then you are probably at a good place in terms of, okay, so this is an appropriate success criteria, boom, now you've got it there. So how will we know that that's been a success? What are the reasonable, actionable goals that we can attain? And then you have to encourage frequent and continuous feedback. It's not a matter of looking at things on an annual basis. Going back to that Harvard research, only 1 in 5 companies come close to hitting their organizational strategic goals. And it's typically because we're not looking at the metrics that we can use to measure success against our goals frequently enough. We need to be looking continuously so we can make course adjustments. So for instance, use the example I just provided. We want to retain 10, increase our customers by 10%. So let's say we don't look at that metrics, the metrics that tell us that we're on track until the end of the year, and we find out we've only increased it by 5%. Well, what if we'd been looking at that every couple of weeks all year long, and after the first quarter, we knew we were trending to be behind? Well, at the end of the first quarter, we can look at the things that we've been doing that aren't working and make adjustments. And we have a chance then to achieve that goal at the end of the year. That's why we want to do that. We want to do continuous feedback and examination of what we're doing. Review progress, that's part of that. And then our role in this as leading, the folks that lead the employee development and learning function, we have to lead by example. We have to be continuous learners and continuously look for improvement and evaluate what's happening within the organization objectively, help the other stakeholders evaluate things objectively, and evaluate our own progress objectively. Jessica, I see questions starting to pop up. I'm going to let you just jump in and interrupt me when they come in and it's appropriate to take them. Is there one that we should take now before we move on?
Yeah, there's a good one from Kate about success criteria. So she asked, do high-performance cultures tend to have participatory input to criteria for success, and especially to actionable and achievable goals?
Well, that's actually a little bit of a mixed bag, to be perfectly frank about it. It depends upon the company culture to a large extent. If you've got a culture that's very collaborative and it's a very grassroots sort of thing, then yes, that's the case. Many organizations are simply too large for a lot of participatory development of goals and success criteria, so it doesn't work very well. But the most important elements of effective success criteria and actionable goals is that the chief executive leaders of the organization are visible and clearly communicate them to the entire organization. That's really the key to it. It's not whether everybody participates in setting them. It's that the key stakeholders at the very top of the organization, one, all buy into them, and two, then visibly communicate them to the entire organization. That really turns into the key. And we actually have some material on that in a different webinar, but that turns into the key. So, but it is a little all over the place. It depends a lot on culture and size.
Right. Well, and it's also, I mean, you can even take that down to not just the executive level, but even looking at the manager employee. So it's not critically important really who decides on the goals, but it does have to be agreed upon. So you have to agree that that's something that you're both going to work towards, or as an organization you're going to work towards, and that it's fair and it's achievable.
Correct. Great qualification. That's exactly right. Exactly right. Okay, let's see here. Hang on a second. I goofed up my slides on my iPad here. Let me get them back. Okay, there we are. Now I'm ready to roll. Okay, so one of the things that Jessica and I work really hard to do is to try our very best to make sure that our presentation, as much as I would like them to be theoretical and just fun to talk about, we really want you to have some actionable takeaways. So some organizations perform better than others. No question about that, okay? And that's really what prompted us to get into this. We know know that organizations, even in this crazy environment, even through the economic downturn in 2008, 2009, we know that some organizations continued to do well, all right? So can the reasons for this success be explained beyond theory, one? And two, if that's true, can my organization repeat or model some of them? And the answer to both of those questions is a resounding yes. There are practical things that we can do, those 5 steps that we just explained, and now we're going to explain how these 5 elements tie together very clearly, okay? I see another question from Maureen, which might make sense to take here, Jessica, before we move into the 5 characteristics.
Sure, yeah, so this one's on feedback. So do you have any quick tips on providing continuous feedback in a fast-paced, busy organization?
Talk really fast. No, I do that.
I mean, we are moving. I mean, it's the reality today. And almost every organization is moving fast. The world that we live in moves really fast. So it's really about adjusting. So go ahead, Chris.
It is. No, but Jessica, you were spot on. You were going exactly down the right path. And to continue with that thought, Maureen, you can't wait. That's the whole point. You have to provide feedback in the moment as things are happening. So, for instance, we just got back from a big trade show. We debriefed the trade show immediately. We didn't wait a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to for everybody to sit down and gather their thoughts. We did it immediately. Things happen too fast, and that's true with product development, product changes, innovations, processes. Too much stuff is coming at us too rapidly, too quickly to put things off. You have to provide feedback continuously. This is the sort of thing that you just have to get into the habit of it, and it's a really important skill that and habit, by the way, it's 2 things, a skill and a habit, that you have to instill in your frontline managers. People need to know where they stand and how they're doing on an ongoing basis, and this is the sort of thing that just simply can't wait. Otherwise, you never can make the adjustments necessary to really hit that high performance, those sort of the things that high-performing teams and organizations really do.
And another thing that I'd add, Chris, is to really leverage technology. So there's a lot of tools and resources out there that you can use to your advantage. So some people are implementing enterprise social learning networks, so you can easily, tag someone with a piece of feedback or give them like a bravo or a kudos or something along those lines. Or there's even things, so maybe you can, the one I use a lot is called Pockets. You can save websites and add a tag. So maybe you found an article or something that's going to be relevant to an employee that you really wanted to share with them, but maybe you don't have time to write an email up now. So just leverage different productivity tools and technology resources that can make it easier for you.
And what generation do you belong to?
All right, so a millennial, but it's a reality today. But I mean, it really is. I mean, to move in this and to move fast, you have to leverage technology and use it to your advantage because there's a lot of resources out there that are helpful.
Exactly, and I was a little joking with Jessica, but she's exactly right, and this is one of the things that our younger employees bring to us that we need to pay attention to, is this comfort with technology that will help us in all 5 of these areas. She's exactly right. There's some real wisdom in that comment from her, so I was just teasing her a little bit, but there's some real wisdom in that, so she's exactly right. So here they are. 5 high-performing organizations and teams have these things in common, and they are interrelated, interconnected, highly interconnected. Just like the image here of the sailing boat. I'm not a sailor, but I enjoy watching, these sailing crews. And they look like they're a single organism. They move seamlessly back and forth across the ship as they're making turns and putting up this sail and pulling that sail down. Each piece of the crew in the boat work together in seamless harmony. That's the way these 5 elements have to work too. Strategy, leadership, values and beliefs, processes and structures, and customer approach. Now, we're going to give you some specific examples and the places in each one of these areas where high-performing teams really ratchet up the performance. So if you're going to try to excel on strategy, we've got 3 specific places. Same thing with leadership. All right, so strategy. Here are the 3 elements of a strategic approach where high-performing organizations really separate themselves from other organizations. Organizations' performance measures match the organization's strategy. organization's strategic plan is clear and well thought out, and employees exhibit behaviors needed to execute the strategic plan. Now, oh, by the way, these 5 elements come from a wonderful piece of work published by the American Management Association, the AMA. We provide a lot of advice from time to time about superb resources for you. The AMA is one. I love their resource library. They publish some fantastic guides, and this is another one of them. I just was blown away when we found this. This is just some outstanding research, some outstanding thought leadership, and some really practical information here. So highly recommend the American Management Association whenever you have high-level strategic management issues. Great place to go check. But when I first saw these 3 pieces, I kind of went, well, yeah, these are pretty logical, aren't they? But it's amazing how few times organizations really do these 3 sort of foundational things well when it comes down to strategy. And a lot of times it comes down to that second one. We don't sometimes really lay out an effective strategic plan, because think about how many strategic planning meetings and strategic planning sessions you've gone to, where you walk out of the room and what you're left with is a lot of meaningless jargon and meaningless phrases put together by a consultant. And I've been there. I've led those sessions and have been frustrated by them probably as much as some of the participants. A strategic plan, to be effective, has to have clarity of thought. If it doesn't have clarity of thought and clarity of language and specificity of language, it's worthless. What your strategic plan must do is provide guidance for the entire organization so people can make effective decisions, so it guides behaviors, so employees can exhibit behaviors needed to actually execute the plan. And then you have to be able to measure what you're trying to accomplish. It really begins with the framing of the plan. That's what it comes down to. And organizations make massive mistakes by having too many pieces of a strategic plan. It's impossible to execute more than 2 or 3 high-level strategic objectives. I've seen organizations have 9 or 10. You're setting yourselves up for confusion and difficult pieces of it. This is a great quote from John Katzenbach in an article, The Steve Jobs Way. Far better than most leaders, Jobs intuitively understood the power of cultural influences, sustaining the strategic capabilities implicit in his perpetual vision of creating, as he put it, an enduring company where people were motivated to make great products, a company that will stand for something a generation or 2 from now. Now, he wasn't talking about Apple. He was talking about Pixar. He gets a lot of credit, deserved, for what he did at Apple, but I love his leadership story, the strategic vision he applied at Pixar. His major impact there was what he did to the strategic direction of the company. He really understood that if they had the capital, that they could have the independence to create a body of work, to become a brand that would become as powerful in entertainment as Disney, and guess who bought them eventually? Because they really did. They outshone Disney fairly quickly. But unlike what he did at Apple, where he was involved in the minutia of product design, product development, product ideation, I mean, all kinds of things, he got out of the way at Pixar. It was a completely different approach. He simply set the strategic vision and set the team up to be successful. But he laid out the strategic framework and articulated a vision for them that they executed in clear, unambiguous terms that everybody understood. This is a great illustration of what, when you look at those 5 elements, culture, strategy, leadership, it's all tied together. But the piece that we wanted to illustrate for you here was the strategy. It's a strategic approach that lent consistency to everything that the organization was able to do. So it was just a wonderful illustration of it. Like I said, Jobs gets a lot of credit, deserved credit, by the way, for what he did at Apple. But I think a more interesting story, at least from my perspective, is his time at Pixar. Then the next piece is a customer approach. And here are the 3 places where high-performing organizations really overtake their peers. Customer is the most important factor for developing new products and services. Organization accurately targets its customers' long-term needs, and the organization exceeds customers' expectations. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily that an organization is developing products based upon exactly what the customers tell them they want today. Sometimes it means that they're developing products that customers don't know they need, that they'll need in the future or want in the future. Think the iPad. Going back to Apple, nobody knew we needed an iPad, and now I can't live without mine. But customers are the most important factor for developing new products and services, and they accurately target long-term needs. I think perhaps one of the very best examples of an organization with an incredible customer focus is Nordstrom. They are world-renowned for their customer service, world-renowned for what they do to build customer and brand loyalty. They were the only large retail organization during the downturn in 2008 to 2009 that showed a continued growth in sales. Only one. Everybody else lost ground. Nordstrom's continued to grow. And it's a fascinating piece of this. So they have an external focus on what they're doing. And then you look at the internal design of the stores. Now it's common. Most stores are organized like Nordstrom's, but that was real innovative when Nordstrom's did it. But the piece of this that is really amazing is their philosophical approach. And I just found an article today. I just totally fell in love with it because it's really neat. Guess what their philosophical approach is? Basically, they trust their employees to exercise their own judgment to serve the customer. Now, does that mean their employees are going to make the right decision every single time? No. But they don't have to go get a manager to take a return. They don't have to go get a manager to deal with the customer on the floor. They can deal with the customer right there. They make it unbelievably easy to do business with themselves. And what a philosophical approach that is. And it's this attitude towards their customers that keeps people coming back. So how do they build that? It's, of course, tied to their strategy. It's based upon leadership. It's based on, but it manifests itself most spectacularly at Nordstrom's through their customer approach. Really fascinating thing. Randy Pennington's a friend of the company. Randy's a friend of mine, too, and he's a wonderful writer. He wrote a great book called Results Rule. And he talks about the same basic idea on a different scale, more local. He talks about building a culture where excellence thrives, related to the choices that we all make, related to where we do our dry cleaning, restaurants we go to. Why do we go back to those places? We have lots of choices, but we go back to our favorite places because we typically get great customer service, because they care. They ask us questions. They treat us like we're important to them. And that's what Nordstrom's does on a bigger scale. Anyway, it's a great book. If you haven't read Results Rule, highly encourage it. We also have the course in our collection, a video about that. Then the third of the five is leadership. And leaders in high-performing organizations provide clarity about the organization's performance expectations. They promote the person with the best skills and knowledge to key roles. Okay? They do not promote based upon longevity or seniority, promoting the best skills and knowledge. And employees believe that their behavior affects the organization. So leaders are making sure employees understand the connection between what they're being asked to do and what's going to happen. Leaders explain the why very effectively. Herb Keller, whether you're a fan of Southwest Airlines or not, Herb Keller is a brilliant leader. And he says, our culture is our key competitive differentiator. If we lose our culture, we lose who we are. Well, guess where the culture comes from? It comes straight from Mr. Keller. He is all about this whole friendly approach to the way they treat people. This comes directly from him. He is the source of the culture. He is the source of all of this. And he drives this. Again, going back to the idea that these five pieces are highly interrelated. But Mr. Kelleher reacted and exhibited an amazing sense of leadership in the wake of 9/11. You know, he recognized immediately what was happening, made sure that they got their planes on the ground, that their employees and crew and passengers were safe, took care of that right away, and then immediately contacted banks to secure cash, recognized exactly what was going to happen in the industry, and set Southwest Airlines up to weather the storm, made sure they had enough cash, that they didn't have to lay people off, and they could keep operating and recover as the industry recovers. He set those things in motion literally the day after that tragic, tragic day. But he was thinking ahead. He was acting. He was moving quickly to protect all of the stakeholders that counted on Southwest Airlines, all of the stakeholders, customers, employees, shareholders, everybody. I mean, this is a man that acted decisively and quickly for the benefit of everybody that was counting on him. And on top of that, maintaining this sense of purpose and communicating this sense of purpose to the employees so everybody understands very clearly what this organization is about. There was a wonderful video that went viral on YouTube not long ago, that incredible flight attendant that had that just hilarious explanation of the safety procedures, but everybody on the airplane paid attention. They were laughing with her. That's Southwest culture. That comes right from Mr. Kelleher. That doesn't happen in other airlines. There's a difference when you interact with these people, and it comes direct from his leadership. And if you think about leadership, it's not just from the top, but it's these everyday, day-to-day supervisory relationships that are really, really important. We can't forget these. Supervisory relationships are the single most important drivers of high performance in organizations. They drive engagement, productivity, turnover, and satisfaction. And that relationship between employee and immediate supervisor is the single relationship that is repeated more frequently in our organization than any other management relationship. It is a relationship that we must embrace with development, training, and care. And a lot of organizations, I don't think, spend quite enough time really developing those frontline supervisors to understand how to engage employees, how to drive productivity, and how to really, really motivate and keep people engaged the right way so we can make all of these things happen for us. All right. Jessica, I'm going to keep plowing away. I haven't seen any new questions show up.
Nope, we're good to go, Chris. Just a note, I know we're going through a lot of information and sharing a lot of great resources. I posted a lot of these up on our blog, so you can refer back to them after today's session, so don't break your hand taking notes.
Yeah, I am throwing a lot of new resources at folks today. I'm passionate about this topic, so I was even throwing resources at Jessica earlier today, so I apologize. But yeah, Jessica's keeping us up to date in link and the in chat and on the blog. So then the next of the 5 elements, again, is processes and structure. So the 3 places where high-performing organizations outstrip their peers, organizations' performance measures are clearly defined. Again, we know what we want to do, but we also know how we're going to be measured. And then the second one, near and dear to our heart, employees receive the training and development necessary to do the job. What a surprise. High-performing organizations pay attention to and deliver on the development needs of their employees. Wow, that's not a revolutionary concept to people here. We're all passionate about this, but it's proof that this is important. And then organizations keep current with state-of-the-art technological advances, tying right back into what Jessica said earlier about how important technology tools are to success, particularly in this fast-paced, complex environment. We have to take advantage of these technology tools. There is no other way to do it. Things happen too fast. We're in the world of big data. We're in the world of fast data. Things are happening too quickly. We simply are dependent upon the internet for information, for sales, for research. And you know, if you think about productivity advances and innovations that have impacted your organization, can you really think of one in the past 3 to 5 years that wasn't technology driven? Probably can't, or you'd be hard pressed to. So we need a high degree of technology literacy, and we need to make sure that our organization has technology tools and the employees with the training and the skills necessary to take advantage of that. You know, FedEx, another organization that, you know, I admire a great deal, this is an organization that is on a relentless drive to improve processes. I mean, they've got it down to the point where they can tell you how much they can make if they can shave 5 minutes off of delivery routes. Their entire business plan is a process. It's all about getting packages gathered up, cycled quickly to delivery centers, to Memphis, resorted, and back out on airplanes to the rest of the country. It is breathtaking. And when you really step back and think about it, it's brilliant in its simplicity, brilliant, and executed flawlessly. And it's just an amazing company, but it's a relentless drive on their part to improve their processes. That's how they stay competitive. That's how they stay profitable without radically raising prices. It's an amazing, simply an amazing organization. The thing that strikes me, too, about FedEx was an early recognition about what set them apart, going back to the idea of these 5 interrelated pieces, leadership, culture, processes. When they first started out, they were asked, Mr. Smith, the CEO of the company, was asked about being in the delivery business. So, wait, we're not in the delivery business. We're in the information business. And people kind of looked at him sort of funny. He goes, what we do that's different is we provide up-to-date, real-time information to our customers about where their packages are. And FedEx was one of the early innovators of the customer-facing websites with tracking numbers. Before FedEx came along, that really was incredibly rare. Their tracking system was amazingly innovative. Again, going back to the idea, the entire business plan is a process. So they really set themselves apart from the U.S. Postal Service and from UPS at the time. In the ability, we could put a letter in the overnight mail, but we could look up that tracking number and know exactly where it was and when it was going to be delivered. They were in the information business, and they recognized that really early as a massive competitive differentiator and one of the reasons people would come to do business with them. So their processes and structures have all been built around maximizing the efficiencies of those pieces of their business. It is a stunning, stunning achievement, what they've been able to pull off. And the fact that they're now global is just even more amazing. So quite an organization, and I think it's one that on a couple of different scales is worth a bit of study in terms of, again, the leadership, the clarity of vision, just the way that they have approached what they do, the way they just relentlessly measure success. Really an impressive organization on many levels. Really amazing. Okay, then last but not least, culture, values, and beliefs. Jessica will tell you, she's known me for a number of years, I don't tend to be the most touchy-feely business leader. I'm certainly not the most touchy-feely member of our leadership team here at BizLibrary, but I am a big believer in culture, value, and beliefs when it comes to the workplace. One of the things I've learned about myself over the course of my career is I am most successful when the values of the organization, the culture of the organization I work in are really lined up with what I need and with what I want at this point in my career. Well, guess what? It turns out that culture, value, and beliefs turn out to be a critical element of high-performing organizations too. And I was so excited, truthfully, when I found this in the research. And here are the 3 ways that this element, that high-performing organizations use this element to separate themselves. Organization emphasizes a readiness to meet new challenges. There's a shared value of a commitment to innovation, and most organizations, most employees think the organization is a good place to work. Now, that is wonderful, and I sincerely hope people on my team think this is a good place to work, but it kind of goes, that's sort of one of those, yeah, you like to go where you're going. But look at those top 2 and think about how they apply to this current economic marketplace and environment. Organization emphasizes a readiness to meet new challenges. If your organization, if you hear this around your organization, well, we've never done that before, or we've always done things this way, those should raise immediate red flags, because that indicates in some parts of your organization a cultural anchor that is looking in the rearview mirror, looking backwards, looking to the past for answers, when the past is not going to help you answer the challenges and questions that are coming at us today and in the future. Things are happening too fast. We have to address this vague, ambiguous, complex environment on its terms, and we have to meet these challenges in a different way. So we have to have a different capacity for change, a different capacity for learning, a different capacity for improvement. So I love that first one. That's just, and if you think about really successful organizations, it's a constant commitment to new and improved products, isn't it? Constant. And you just see where those organizations are continually moving ahead. And a shared value of a commitment to innovation, another absolute hallmark of the most successful organizations. And that's been the case forever, truthfully. Best organizations, the most successful organizations, high-performing organizations are continuously finding ways to innovate, whether they're disruptive innovations or sustaining innovations. They're constantly looking at ways to do things better, more efficiently, and to make things work better. Zappos is a great illustration of the power of a culture. These are bullet points taken right from their website. I love these. Deliver wow through service, embrace change, drive and change, create a fun and a little weirdness. I just love that one. Be adventurous, creative, and open-minded. Be passionate and determined, and be humble. You know exactly what you're getting into when you go there. And this is an organization that carries this forward. They're marked by fantastic leadership, a really innovative company, one of the first consumer-facing consumer products websites around. Really another fascinating study in all of these elements that we've talked about today, that they tie it all together in a brilliant, brilliant package, and it's a really fun company. Highly encourage you to do a little bit of research about them. So if you think about the 5 elements that we talked about, just a quick review of those: strategy, leadership, customer approach, processes and structure, values and belief. And then with those 5 elements, we define success criteria and set actionable goals. We are encouraging feedback, frequent and continuous feedback, and we're always, always reviewing progress. And then we take it upon ourselves to lead by example as continuous learners and evaluate progress objectively. We've got a good chance to help move our organization from our current state of performance towards creating a performance-based culture, or improving the quality of our performance-based culture if we're already there. All right, Jessica, I'm going to turn it back over to you, if that's okay, to wrap up. This is a great quote from Michael Rochelle. I'll wrap up with this, and then I'll turn it over to Jessica. In a world of learning and development where complexity is the enemy, BizLibrary has developed a simple and nimble approach to delivering high-quality learning anywhere, anytime. Now, I'm thrilled to death that Michael mentioned BizLibrary. He gave this speech at our client conference last year. But the key thing here is complexity is the enemy. And that's one of the hallmarks of these high-performing organizations. Go back to what we said about Nordstrom. They empower their sales associates. That's how they deliver this great customer service. They took the complexity out of it. We're going to empower our employees and trust them to do the right thing. With Southwest Airlines, we're going to make sure everybody knows this is a fun place to fly. We're going to make this simple for everybody to understand. Great organizations do this really, really well. Complexity is the enemy. And it's the same thing with our learning strategies. And if we're going to deliver a high-performing organization, we've got to really, really find ways to simplify things. And again, like I said earlier, simplicity is elegant. It's just not easy. So that's my final word for the day. Well, not really, but for now.
Sounds good, Chris. So again, we're a little biased. Continuous learning and improvement are critical components of our culture here at BizLibrary, but we also think it's really a critical component to improving your employees' performance, or even just meeting the needs of your organization. So whether you're focusing on strategy, leadership, customer approach, processes and structure, or the culture of our organization, really having those resources available for your employees and managers is going to help you to achieve that performance. So here are some recommended resources that I've outlined. These are included in the BizLibrary collection. So big fan of Dan Pink. There's a short video on engagement through autonomy, collaboration, mentoring, criteria for performance excellence, and then Chris mentioned earlier results rule, that video and book from Randy Pennington. So these are some good resources that I'd recommend that are included in the collection. Also highlight these leadership lesson videos. So these are great for leaders in your organization. They provide quick takeaways and actionable items. So it can be a great way to kind of kickstart your day or kickstart a leadership group meeting. These are also included in the BizLibrary collection as well. So there's over 7,000 courses. It's growing on a daily basis. It's almost hard for me to keep up. That's why I put the plus sign, because it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Covers more than 25 topic areas and set up to where your employees get unlimited access. So if you want to try out any of the resources that I recommended or highlighted, you're welcome to do so. I'll put up a quick poll. You can do a free 30-day no obligation trial with us. All right, so we got some good questions in, Chris. I'll put up this poll and just leave it up for a little bit. Is there a question that you want to start with, or do you want me to grab one for you?
Actually, I wanted to kind of chime in on a comment that we got from Janelle.
Cool. All right.
She said, I like the idea, hire to culture. Most companies want to hire and then conform hires to their culture, even if there is a mismatch. This, of course, leads to higher turnover. And she's spot on. One of the things we learned at last year's Align conference from Larry Broughton is he talked about how to build high-performing teams, and that's precisely the advice that he gave our participants at the conference, that you hire for attitude. And he, Jessica, I'm probably going to forget all three of the elements, but he mentioned that there were three elements. There was capacity, motivation, and integrity. That is it, capacity, motivation, integrity. And he said if you find people that fit your culture in those three areas, capacity to learn, capacity to grow, you're probably going to make a good hire. And Janelle's exactly right. That's the first step in building high-performance organizations, is those selections. And you hire for culture. That is exactly the right way to do it. It makes me nuts when organizations are continually looking for that square peg, square hole in terms of skills and experience. They're making a mistake. They're leaving potentially good hires out there that might do fantastic jobs, because we can learn skills, but we can't learn the cultural fit.
Yep, great comment. And just to make a note, that came from the idea of Zappos. That's a big takeaway. If you do any research on Zappos and the Zappos culture, that's a big part of it, is hiring to the culture and understanding it and having that clarity of what and who you are. All right, one more question, Chris, if that's okay?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So a question says, what about where you have some colleagues who feel that because they're not customer-facing employees, they don't have any business providing excellent customer service? Doesn't that defeat the purpose of the customer strategy?
Well, no, it doesn't. And that is, this is where leadership really comes into play. Go back to what we said earlier about the indicators of great leadership. One of the things that leaders do is they make it clear what the vision of the organization is. They communicate this very effectively. And going back to the idea, too, about culture, where every employee in the organization understands how what they do contributes to what the organization does, okay? So if you have employees who don't necessarily work in a customer-facing role, it's the leadership's job to make sure that those employees understand the clear, direct line connection between those employees' job function, their role, and delivering great customer service, because there is one. I guarantee you there is one. So you have to make that connection for the employees. That's a critically important piece of it, and you can't lose sight of it. So you've got to make that connection for the employees. It may be apparent to us. It may be incredibly apparent to us, but we can't count on our employees making that connection on their own. That's why leadership has to do it, and that's one of those critical elements in that leadership piece of it.
All right, great questions today. I'll go ahead and wrap up. For those of you that are attending for HRCI credit, I put a link to the completion certificate in the chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You should be able to click on that and download the certificate. I'll also email that out to attendees in a follow-up email that you'll receive tomorrow afternoon around this same time. For additional resources, as well as the webinar recording and the slides, I put a link up to our blog in the chat panel as well. I put a lot of the articles and resources that we referenced today up there as well. Next week's webinar is on how to build a business case for online employee training. So whether you're just getting started with your training program or you'd like to present an initiative for something new. We'll talk about kind of 5 key elements to include when presenting to senior leadership and kind of going beyond just the traditional view of return on investment or ROI. So we do these webinars every week. I hope you'll join us for a future session. They're all pre-approved for HRCI credit. Thanks again for joining us today. Hope everyone has a great July 4th holiday. And thank you, Chris, for presenting with us as well.
Yeah, glad to do it. Everybody have a great holiday weekend, and we'll see you next week, I hope. Bye-bye.